Hello and welcome everyone to this special edition where we take you inside the official swearing-in ceremony of Algeria's re-elected President Abdelmajid Tebboune. Today's event, held at the Palace of Nations in Algiers, marks the beginning of President Tebboune's second term after securing 84.30% of the vote in the recent snap presidential election. In the presence of top state officials and key national representatives, President Tebboune took the oath of office, pledging to uphold the constitution and continue leading the country toward progress and stability. Stay with us as we get into the details of this historic moment and its significance for Algeria's future. Welcome again, everyone, to our special program. Before starting our discussion, let's bring in the latest from the swearing-in ceremony. The Algerian president-elect launched national dialogue for genuine democracy. Let's have a listen.
من خلال العهدة الثانية هاته وفي ظروف تسمح لنا بذلك نقوم باتصالات كثيفة واستشارات مع كل طاقات الحية للوطن، السياسية منها والاقتصادية والشبانية، أن ندخل في حوار وطني مفتوح لنخطط معا المسيرة التي ستنتهجها بلادنا فيما يخص تجسيد الديمقراطية الحقة، مش ديمقراطية الشعارات، ديمقراطية التي تعطي السيادة حقيقة لمن يستحقها.
In the same context, the Algerian president-elect Abdelmajid Tebboune held the transparent and fair election competition.
أود أن أشيد بالمترشحين السيدين عبد العالي حسن شريف من حزب حركة مجتمع السلم ويوسف أوشيش من حزب جبهة القوى الاشتراكية، وقد خضنا معا حملة انتخابية نظيفة طبعها التنافس النزيه في عرض البرامج والأفكار على الناخبات والناخبين، ولئن اختلفت فيها أدوات وأساليب الإقناع فقد جرت في كنف الاحترام المتبادل وفي إطار ضوابط الممارسة السياسية الديمقراطية وبما يمليه الضمير الأخلاقي والوفاء لبلد الشهداء وما يقتضيه الولاء للوطن. ولا يفوتني في هذا السياق أن أسجل بارتياح واعتزاز النجاح الذي طبع هذا الاستحقاق الوطني الهام بالسلاسة والطمأنينة والأمن منذ بداية التحضير لها غداة إعلان عن الانتخابات الرئاسية المسبقة. وأحيي هنا الجيش الوطني الشعبي وأسلاك الأمن، كل الأسلاك الأمن وكل قطاعات المعنية بتوفير إسناد لوجستي لتحقيق الانتخابات شفافة حرة ونزيهة.
To begin our discussion, let's first start by welcoming our distinguished panel of guests. And in our studio, we're joined by Mr. Abdelnour Toumi, geopolitical analyst and author. Thank you for accepting our invite.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you very much. And we're also having with us via Skype Dr. Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean Professor of International Studies in California University via Skype. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Miriam, and my greeting to your guests.
Thank you very much. And we also have with us via Skype Dr. Mohamed Sassi, financial and geopolitical analyst via Skype. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, and again, congratulations for this election. And let's over the. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let's begin our discussion. The President of the Republic, Tebboune, took the oath of office for a second term. What is the symbolic of the oath taken ceremony? Mr. Hamoud Salhi, maybe let's start with you.
Oh, thank you, Miriam. It's very significant because it gives legitimacy to the process. It makes it very clear that the elections are over, and more than anything else, it is a sign that peaceful transition is happened. And so it's very, very legitimate with many, many positive signals.
Right, thank you very much. And maybe now let's go back to the electoral process of the September 7th presidential election. Algeria succeeded in its electoral process and reached another phase on the path of democracy. Mr. Abdelnour Toumi, how do you interpret the final results by the Constitutional Court?
Actually, the Constitutional Court, it is the Supreme Court in the land, and it did, in fact, confirm the results, and this goes in the legality process. But like Professor Salhi stated, it is a huge significant in terms of the peaceful political transition that Algeria has been going through in the last 5 years. And those elections that took place in very, very mature and peaceful context did in fact confirm the maturity of the Algerian voters, and also the political elite, the media, and the voters afterwards. So all these elements did in fact help enhance the healthy democratic process that Algeria is going through.
Thank you very much. To you, Mr. Sassi, how do you interpret the final results by the Constitutional Court?
Well, as the President panelist said, it was accepted. It was within the law of the land. But I would like to add the elections are always a global challenge. And in Algeria in 2024, it's a challenge with no exception. Across more than 50 countries representing the world population, national elections are scheduled, including presidential election and legislative contests, while the expansion of voting rights are generally positive, and it was in Algeria as well. Yes, we have some complications, but this year will test the resilience of even the strongest democracy, and could embolden some people. But again and again, congratulations, election was done, and you have to accept it as it is and go further and look at the future.
Right. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, how does the government plan to further involve Algerians in the democratic processes and strengthen citizens' participation in governance in light of this election's voter turnout, since we're talking about democracy?
The way the elections have gone sends a strong signal. Number one, we had a challenge, and that challenge was solved peacefully. That is the most important thing that we need to consider, that the system in place in terms of organizing and leading the elections is fair and balanced. And when there is a problem, there is an entity that handles it. So the decision by the Supreme Court the Constitutional Court is a strong signal that the democratic process is respected, and more than anything else, the population, the system, the entire institution of Algerian believes in the system. Forward now, in terms of getting more people participating, President Abdelhamid Tebboune stated that his goal is to make or to adopt what he calls a true democracy. I think in that sense, what is expected in the future is to get the political parties at adopt a new political culture, one that takes into account the needs of the country, the aspiration of the people, and a culture that understands responsibilities. So it is no longer a matter, a political development or economic development in general is not a matter of a state, but more so an individual responsibility as well. I think that's where the work should be done. The political parties have to find a way to revive themselves. In addition, you have huge growing youth population that are involved in mass organization, grassroots movements, university at the university. These are all important entities, and with a strong culture that push for respect of the state, that development is not a state matter. It is a state matter, but more so an individual matter. I think that will help generate some kind of more enthusiasm from the political parties in place to make themselves viable and meaningful. Because what we have seen so far, the political parties have yet in Algeria to live up to their expectation, and they can do better.
Mr. Abdelnour Toumi, during the election campaign, the Algerian president reiterated his commitment to fulfilling the promises he has made. How do you evaluate what has been achieved in the past 5 years during the first presidential term?
Actually, it was indeed a good achievement. And this is, what made the voters to give President Abdelmajid Tebboune, President-elect Abdelmajid Tebboune, a second term to finish what he started 5 years ago. And all these signs go with the political will and the sincerity of the administration toward the Algerians, and also the challenges that Algeria will be facing in the near future, and so on. So the expectation, on the other hand, from the voters and from the Algerians, generally speaking, is also, huge. So therefore, the new administration now needs to answer to all these expectations on one hand, and also the voters and the Algerians, generally speaking, need to help this healthy political process that Algeria is going through, as I stated earlier, since the, started with the Hirak, and also was, confirmed and by the election in 2019 of President Abdelmajid Tebboune. So this is why today we need a solid political elite to fulfill all these expectations and give more credibility to this process, because in the end of the day, so democracy needs also Democrats, people who do believe really in democracy.
Thank you. Now, to Mr. Sassi, the reforms launched by Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune in his first term were at multiple levels: economic, legal, and political. What is your assessment, especially on the economic side?
Well, the stakes are very high, and this is why the outcome of this election will impact not just the country involving, but also the global landscape, with the consequences for human rights, as it was said before, for the economy and the peace. And again, in the fair election remain important in order to have this and to also answer the new challenges. Yes, Algeria has been pursuing an ambitious path to the development with a focus on building resilience, adopting innovations, and economic modernization. The country has reaching a significant new milestone this year. The most recent example, this was seen in the release of the July 1st, 2024 from the World Bank. Algeria is one of the only 4 countries worldwide that moved across the path from the low or middle income to upper middle income taxes. classification. So this shift Algeria toward modernization of a system to overall all these challenges that we have. While the Algerian economy grew up by 4.1% in 2023, the main driver of the upward reclassification will be a comprehensive revision to national account statistics and, of course, to increase all our global economy.
Right. Now let's move a little bit to the future and the prospects for the next 5 years. The first presidential term was marked by internal stability, growth. How does the government plan to maintain this stability and security in light of regional conflicts, especially, Mr. Abdelnotoumi?
And actually, it's another element that pushed the voters to re-elect President Abdelmajid Tebboune. I mean, they voted for, as you said, for stability. And more importantly, also, there is hope also. And all this will help to bring stability, security, and prosperity. But all these three elements, I mean, they are connected with, again, sincerity and trust. And this trust needs to be built, be shared by the administration and also the citizens. By the administration, I mean, needs to implement genuine public policies and tackling all these social questions that, again, the citizens are asking. I mean, it's actually because they are dealing with these challenges in their daily basis. And for instance, the unemployment and the cost of living and so on. So all this, I mean, will help also the democratic process because, again, democracy, it's, you know, beautiful thing, but it is concrete, so needs to be concrete. So this is why I personally put the responsibility, but in a good way, on the political elite, including political parties and civil society actors. And therefore, this altogether brings the main theme of checks and balances in which we'll create all this political stability, economic growth, and also, of course, when we speak about economic growth, is development.
Now, speaking of stability, some parties have incessantly tried to destabilize the country in the name of freedom of speech. Hence, civil liberties in Algeria have been under scrutiny. How will Tebboune tackle human rights concerns in his second term in light of Western double standards and other countries' double standards, Mr. Salhi?
It's a very important question on the international level. The role that Algeria has played in the United Nations General Assembly, in the United Nations Security Council, will continue on that path. The treatment of Palestinians, how it's different from others, the need to revise or to amend and to create or reform the international institutions is very, very important. Human rights is a very, very controversial issue internationally. The definitions of what is a human right vary from one country to another, but the international institutions are more eager to adopt Western standards. So from that perspective, Algeria could play and will play a very, very significant role, given its credibility diplomatically, internationally. Locally, human rights is also measured by the economic development, by freedom of the press, by the ability to go through a process within due process. The Algerian court has proven its ability to handle matters of human rights and has a system in place to deal with those institutions. It is very important that we sort of adopt the constitutions, the laws of the country, the way we define and approach human rights, because certainly what is perceived internationally as human rights may not be the same in countries that have different social social economic structure. The other thing is very, very important to note that human rights has been the issue that gave some kind of impetus for international forces to intervene in matters of domestic issues, be it in Algeria and other places. So it's a very, very important issue. And it is sort of, you have in Algeria institutions that handles that, and it is in that context that is expected that we see more of the same and continuing in the same process.
Right. To another point, Algerian president promised that his new term will be economic by excellence. According to you, Mr. Sassi, what should top his agenda, economically speaking?
I'm going to go to that point, but on the other hand, I would like to follow on the human rights and the international way Algeria have been perceived for this election, specifically, for example, to France, who criticize our way. And I agree with Mr. Salhi. What is the law of the land in France and the law they want to apply in Algeria, for example? If you look at France, President Macron is a new monarch, and it's not a democracy, in my point of view. When you name your first minister from a party, a person from Michel Barnier, who have less than 4% during the election. This have been said. When you talk about, as Mr. Salhi said, the international scene for the human rights, just think about Gaza, what happened right now. What are they doing? Thanks God, Algeria, through our membership at the Security Council, come to raise the flag of this double language, cette langue de bois, c'est deux poids, deux mesures, as we said in French. So, yes, I agree that Algeria maybe have some venue to go on, but I don't see any issue regarding the human rights in Algeria, for example. And now to come back to the economical point of view. Yes, the economical point of view, Tebboune, our president, he have succeed in keeping these campaign promises, and he would like to do for the second term in economic by excellence. I think he will succeed. When you look at what was done regarding the opening for the global internationalization in terms of trade, and again, not to go to another avenue, but every country in the world will be liberated from this wave of poverty and misery through trade. We have to open our market, and we have to go to other markets. Look at Africa. Why don't you go to Africa instead of going to Europe? And they don't want us, and they don't look at us, and they do everything in their hand to block us. Look at the chocolate, for example, against, I'm sure that you are following that. I don't forget the name, Marjana. So we have, and we do have the excellence in the company. You have Saidal, for example. They cover Africa in terms of pharmaceutical. We have the JICA with the all the material for the construction. You have another company that is doing very well as well, Asmandan, etc., etc. So I think, yes, President Tebboune have to try at least to make it more open and facilitate not only the investment for the foreigner, but also Algeria to go to other countries to invest because they are new market as well.
So this is what should top the economic agenda according to you, Mr. Sassi?
Yes, I think we have to go and look for other market than the European one. Yes, they are very good partner, quote unquote. We have a community that live overseas in France, so on and so forth. But I will take an example that comes just in mind like this, the Vietnam. Look at Vietnam 50 years ago. What did they do to increase the market? How did they do it? Asia. And we are in Africa. And we have 6 borders around our country with some challenges, yes. But we should working definitively on trying to acquire this part of the market. Why? Because everybody in 20 years or 30 years is going to Africa. The youth of the country, the possibility, les matières premières, etc., etc. So Africa, for me, is the way we have to look at. And I would like to have Mr. Salhi as well, or Mr. Tum, if you want to go further on that proposition.
Would you like to comment on this, Mr. Toumi?
It is indeed. I agree fully with our guest. And also, I mean, economic perspective that we saw President Abdelmajid Tebboune, he did already lay down his strategy for, for the future. And this is, was orchestrated by the two strategic economic strategic plans. I mean, the Trans-Saharan pipeline and also the Garjbilat project. This is, strategically speaking, on the how to push the country and have a solid feet regionally and internationally. Not to mention also on the bilateral level and how Algeria is now enhancing its relation economically with Tunisia, Mauritania, and also with the Saharan countries. Nonetheless, there are serious troubles now in Mali, but there is Niger, who is, again, the political leaders of Niger are willing to work with Algeria, and they know well how the power of Algeria and also the asset of Algeria in this part, in the sub-regional level. However, Algeria also is sending a strong message to the global powers. And we saw that, lately Algeria has joined the bank development with the development bank of the BRICS, and this is a serious factors. Can Algeria play in the regional and international level?
A comment, Mr. Salhi, on this point?
I think my friend, Dr. Toumi, illustrated very well. And so, Dr. Sassi, just a few points we might add. Number one is to stress the fact that Algeria has always sought to have what we call independent economic decision-making. In other words, it's Algeria that decides what's best for interest. In early, I believe, 80s or 90s, when the United States wanted to come to Algeria, they were pushing for bringing what we call light manufacturing or self-serving, like McDonald's and other things like this sort. The Algerians went against that because they wanted heavy technology and technologies that benefit the Algeria without any kind of impact on the social fabric, and more than anything else, on the decision-making processes. The second thing I think that is important is that when you look at the last years, the first term of Abdelmajid Tebboune, we see there was a huge economic, or what we call soft power involvement, interaction, activities. I could say hundreds of treaties were signed, all pertaining to the economic development of the country. I think what is needed in the next 5 terms, which is 5 years, is what is is the implementation, the follow through. We have to start.
We might go on a short break, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. To our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, and back to you, Salhi. You were saying?
I was talking about or illustrating a point that Dr. Toumi and Sassi have mentioned earlier, which is this global role that Algeria has played in the economy, and the fact that in the last 5 years we have had several hundreds of agreements signed with different countries. What needed, we expect to happen in the next 5 years, is to follow through, is to implement those decisions. So you have a structure there. You have treaties. So we move in to the implementation. The second thing, as the president said earlier today, I believe, that there is a need to achieve some kind of self-sufficiency. The pledge to achieve self-sufficiency in the wheat production is a clear, in this year, is an acceptable goal and will be reachable. The other thing that we learned from the pandemic, that it is very, very important to implement and to establish a strong domestic economy. I think there are huge steps in that area, particularly in the non-oil field areas. Agriculture, for example, we start to see national products on the national scene. Those are very, very important. It helps promote, achieve another goal, which is to increase the level of unemployment, particularly youth. So encouraging the domestic economy is very, very important. The president, on several occasions, when he met with the press, he always stressed domestic economy and the existence of a framework to encourage that. So those are the areas I feel that we could do well, particularly with the existence of a strong economic infrastructure supported by treaties we signed with neighboring and foreign countries. The project that Sonatrach and other companies that have underway in Libya, in Tunisia, all those are very, very important, and they will bring a lot of success to the country.
For the country. So what challenges do you foresee ahead for the next 5 years, Mr. Abnortomi?
Actually, it's a big challenge, domestically or locally. As we stated earlier, it is actually the new administration has to answer to the expectation of the citizens, and particularly, the issue of the power purchase and the employment and the youth issue, because, as we all know, they are a serious and solid segment in the society. On the sub-regional level, and the main challenge is the instability and the turmoil that is taking place in Mali, particularly. And this brings us to the issue of the migrants. The new administration and the decision makers, now they should to look at this human tragedy that has become a national security issue and needs to be tackled seriously with a solid and sincere policy. Regionally speaking, whether on the African level, and Algeria now has positioned itself on this new posture of its new doctrine of foreign policy, that is an active foreign policy, and Algeria has confirmed its pivotal role in the continent. On the Arab level, which is, we are a part of this region also, and has also to, again, position itself strongly, and has been doing that, and notably on the carnage that is taking place in Palestine. And we saw how Algeria's role is very solid vis-à-vis the issue of the Palestinian cause and the Palestinians' rights, and how Algeria has become a voice of the Palestinians, not only in the UN Security Council, but also by its strong support, on a humanitarian level and political level and diplomatically, and also solidarity of the people, Algerian people who are strongly supporting their brothers and sisters in Palestine. And this brings us to what have stated by our distinguished guest, when speaking about the double standards of the human rights issue and how the international system is collapsing, and notably the UN, because unfortunately the UN now looks like, if it continues like this, it looks like the League of Nations, and the issue, who is going to break down its failure is their an accountability vis-à-vis the Palestinians, and how we saw the Zionist states is having, all its quote-unquote rights and for not impunity and accountability toward the international law, humanitarian international law, and simply toward the Charter of the UN. And all this, Algeria and Algerian diplomacy has been solid on these issues and has spoken. The leaders and also our diplomats are, and we are proud of that, and our diplomats have been, again, speaking up about this injustice.
Justice. To you, Mr. Abdel Salhi, what's there to be done in the next 5 years? What are the challenges ahead? Mr. Hamoud Salhi, sorry.
I think, Miriam, thank you. And I take this from a self-interest. I think we need to reach out to the diaspora. We need to reach out to those of us who are outside, to the communities outside, and make them sort of fully integrated in the economic development of the country. Our diaspora have a lot to contribute, and this is really a free bonus. They bring expertise, they bring a lot to the country, and I think it will be sort of concrete, an example to illustrate that is, up to this point, we have made what I call political diplomatic signals to the diaspora, but we have not taken concrete decisions in that area. So the wealth of expertise is very, very important. The second thing, as Dr. Toomey mentioned, the whole issue of security, and this is very, very important. We are on the verge of experiencing a major transformation in international order. With the Ukraine, what emerged outside that just before the tragic genocide against Gaza, there was a discussion about looking at the economic alliances, forming blocs that would counter the Western blocs. And that still remains. So the economic development linked, or the economic blocks, are very, very important. The idea of reviving or giving some teeth to the regional organizations is very, very important. Then Gaza came in, and the whole issue of representation, the whole issue of the need to reform the United Nations Security Council, these are important factors. Algeria in the 70s and 80s pushed strongly for the revision of amendment or the creation or adoption of a new international economic order. Algeria was the lead country in calling for a new international economic order. So that those are serious challenges internationally, and which I think, I believe strongly that Algeria will do. And it remains, as both Sassi and Toomey mentioned, the need to work on the domestic economy, employment of the youth. And then let's not forget one important development in our sort of environment these days. Miriam, as you know, you have social media that is expanding everywhere. That requires us to lead a strong public relation in that area. Our embassies should play a very, very strong role in this, in projecting Algeria as a place for prosperity, for economic growth, and to give the right image of the Algerians. In the past, Algeria has been known by its revolution, and then the dark days of the 90s. We have to move beyond that. So social media in that area Algeria, the way we promoted Algeria internationally, particularly in areas of diplomacy and so on and so forth. But linked to that is what's happening in the sphere of economic transition. We moved to a new area. We're talking about cybersecurity. We're talking about information technology dominating our lives. It doesn't make sense, for example, to still have problem accessing internet in the country. Those issues are very, very important, and Algeria could be a leader in that in many areas. The technology is not just having a cell phone; it has a huge impact on our well-being and in the future. Now these days we're talking about automatization. We're talking about getting rid of people. We're talking about artificial intelligence, business analytics. All of these are areas that we need to look at. And because the way it structures, we are interdependent. We cannot hide ourselves from the rest of the country. We need also to be cognizant of this development. And I think this is why when I started with this.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, Mr. Hamoud Salhi, we have to interrupt this program. There is the UN General Assembly and it has to go live.
ويمكن الشعب الفلسطيني من التمتع بالكامل بحقوقهم. إن بلدي الجزائر لطالما وقفت إلى جانب فلسطين ودعمت على الفور مشروع القرار هذا، ودعت كافة الدول إلى التصويت لصالح هذا القرار ودعمه. يجب أن نتحد اليوم في دعمنا في تضامننا مع الشعب الفلسطيني. يجب أن نقف معا للدفاع عن القانون الدولي. ينبغي أن نقف متحدين من أجل السلام. وشكرا.
Back to you, Mr. Abdel Noor Salhi. Excuse us for the interruption.
No worries, Mariam. I mean, the transition, what's happened on the global economy is very, very important to consider, and I think this is why the role of those who are living outside, who have the expertise, who can play an important role. The universities also have to play a major role in this. The introduction, for example, at the universities of online instructions, virtual learning, having conferences virtually in this area can help us advance and acquire the technology and have our students learn those technologies by simply signing an agreement between universities inside the countries and abroad. So those are really serious challenges. So the next 5 years is very, very, very important, not only to the Algerian domestic population, but also to its role in global politics, and I expect Algeria to continue on the same path.
Understood. Now, if we mention the past 5 years in the context of international relations and diplomacy, Algerian president brought Algeria back to its international arena. How can we further solidify and strengthen this position, Mr. Sassi?
Yes, I just would like, before I answer that question, I would like to follow on Dr. Salhi as well as Dr. Toumi, relating to the challenge for the next 5 years.
5 years.
One point that we don't have ignorance, I think Dr. Salhi enhanced it as well as Dr. Toumi, is our youth population. I don't have the exact number, but I think it's between 60 and 70% of the youth in Algeria are the future of the country. And if we don't tackle that needs, we are not going to be able to get out of this avenue of misery. We cannot do it without the majority of our population. Now, regarding the diaspora, as Dr. Salhi said, yes, the diaspora honestly have been ignored for all these past years. I don't want you to remember what happened 2 years ago when they tried even to say to the Algerian who living overseas that they cannot perform or access to certain posts because of their dual nationality. So I would like to have the point. And then again and again, as we just saw, to answer your question, with our ambassador at the UN, Algeria's position on the international stage is evolving by both internal and external pressure. Internal pressure, we all have challenges like every country, but external pressure, we are a country who have 6 borders, and none of them, I should say, are the most secure at the present time, not by us, but because our geopolitical strategy. Now, as a member of the United Nations Security Council, the country is a key security partner for the West. You like it or not, but you have to play that role, particularly in the effort to combat extremist threat across Africa. We are in Africa. We want to conquer, as I said, this market, which is our future. So therefore, we have to be also partner with our African countries. Yes, we talk about militaries and they make us believe that Algeria is the first, the second, or the third. This is not important. They did already play that game with Iraq. We are not going to go to that stand. We are going to build it, as I said, economically. But again and again, Algeria is more relevant to Africa than to Europe. Even though we have a chance that happened, we have, as Dr. Salhi said before, the Russia crisis, and you have, as I said, an opportunity to stand and to increase our exchange regarding the gas and the oil. But the new international prominence also brings increased regional responsibility. Algeria's success, as I said, in the recent UN at the UN Security Council with the cessez-le-feu for Gaza, it was a showcase of what is going to happen to Algeria and what should happen to Algeria to be the far on the international scene. And we have the geostrategic position, we have the geoeconomic position, and we have also the experience. Don't forget that Algeria fight for 132 years to get its independence, and we succeeded. So again and again, I would like to say that Algeria needs to collaborate more closely with all the countries, but don't forget that we are Algeria and we have a role to play. For example, we are talking with Dr. Sarhi talk about the Palestinian issue. Yes, we did some effort to put it on the international scene. And I think we succeeded, not only because of the ambassador, but also with our diplomacy. Then we mentioned also the problem with Niger and Mali and Niger, and we have to put it in the map and also to expose it for the next 5 years. We have to deal with this. We cannot afford to have this insecurity in our border. And now I come back on the economic front, and I will give you back the floor. Algeria is a large market, but also, unfortunately, a large informal market, I said, and also we have to try to tackle our black market currency trade. That costs us a lot of money. Why the informal economy?
Mr. Sassi.
Yeah, go ahead.
In a related matter, speaking of Algerian diplomacy, how should Algeria navigate global political challenges we're just speaking about away from international pressures exerted in the region, especially regarding its backing of just causes, as we just mentioned the conflict in Gaza and Western Sahara?
Well, I think you are doing what should be done right now. And I think Dr. Salhir, if you want to answer, because I know it's your field of expertise, we are doing the right thing, is to make the other inside the UN as well as the Unité Africaine, UA. We are doing it, Dr. Salhi. I read also many of your articles, and then I give you back the floor. You can answer better than me on that.
Understood. To you, Mr. Toumi, how will the re-election of President Tebboune impact Algeria's foreign relations, particularly with neighboring countries and major global powers?
And again, I mean, it gives a solid position for Algeria that will be incarnated by President Abdelmajid Tebboune, who earned a political legitimacy and also has now a political capital because the score or the result that he earned in this race, it is legitimate, and indeed it does confirm his position, and also send a strong message for the the political leaders abroad about the political stability, and on one hand, and also how this administration, and then could be some arrangement here and there for the next administration, who are again focusing strongly on world stability, and by playing a major role locally, separately, and regionally, and also, as Dr. Sassi and Professor Sarhi stated before that, how Algeria in all these turmoil and this world instability, won how to position itself in this posture by sending a strong message to those leaders in the world. And Algeria has a huge future to play in world stage.
In world stage. Thank you very much for your insights, Mr. Abdelnour Toumi, Mr. Mahmoud Salhi, and Mr. Mohamed Sassi. We appreciate your insights. And thank you, dear viewers. We're running out of time. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.